crack open your bottle of rum and get ready to start singing sea shanties with the boys, because Amazon Prime has supplied us with a new movie in this swashbuckling genre with The Bluff. Directed by Frank E. Flowers, the movie stars Priyanka Chopra Jonas, Karl Urban, and Timwera Morrison. The film follows a skilled pirate who must confront her bloody past and unleash her deadly talents to save her family from a ruthless siege when her tranquil life on a remote island is shattered by the return of her vengeful former captain. I don't think I've ever had the chance to mention on the channel that while I wouldn't go as far as to say I absolutely love the subgenre, I am fond of pirate films, which does help as I grew up on the sometimes great, sometimes mixed bag that is the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, directed by Gore Verbinski. I did have those movies at the back of my mind while watching this, and I understand that it is a bit unfair to judge movies between one another, but fuck it, it's gonna be hard not to while watching this. Not to say the plot is remotely similar to those movies, but there are aspects that had my cogs in my brain turning, which I'll fully explain as we get into this review, so let's get into it. I'm gonna start by talking about the performances, leading with Priyanka Chopra Jonas. She's known for roles in movies like Baywatch and Heads of State, which funnily enough is another direct-to-Prime movie which I've also reviewed on this channel, so you can go check that out right after this video. I thought she did pretty good in her role. This is certainly one of her more better roles as she's been in recently, as she has a lot to deal with her character. For a majority of the runtime, she approaches every situation with such headstrong manner. Some less intelligent people will immediately chop her down to being a girl boss character, but I do believe she's written with a lot better nuance than these characters that we've been seeing in the past. When it comes to a lot of the action scenes she's placed in, she's always very capable of handling these moments in a realistic way from her performance. Whether or not it's a body double or not, I wasn't able to check before saying this part of the video. There's moments where her character is in peril, and her emotions in a scene like this are really well done, because despite us hearing about horrific things her character may have done in the past, you can't help but feel sympathy for her and the predicament of which she's placed in. Karl Urban plays the antagonist pirate captain in this. He's known for roles in movies like Thor Ragnarok and the Lord of the Rings franchise, but recently, for all the new gens, he's probably mainly known for his role in the TV show The Boys. I thought for the most part he did a good job at being the villain in this. He has this aura about him where he's able to be threatening with a look and the mannerisms he presents with his co-stars. However, one thing I couldn't fully get behind was his accent, especially as there was times where I couldn't tell if he was trying to do some sort of Irish accent or if he was just trying to do a stereotypical pirate accent. But it just didn't work for him. I've seen a lot of people commentating on Urban can't fully do accents, and his natural accent tends to come out of it. The only time he's managed to maintain an accent is when he's in The Boys, and even as that show has gone on, it seems to be more exaggerated than the first season.
What on about him? There I was, filling up the motor. I turn around, the little git had done a runner.
Timwera Morrison is in this movie too. He's known for roles in movies like Star Wars and Moana. In this movie, he's essentially playing the second in command to Karl Urban's character, and for a somewhat villainous role, I thought he did a good job for the time that he was on screen. He doesn't do an awful lot when he's in the movie, but his presence is always felt as it's strong when it's there. I honestly just mainly like seeing him show up in film, so it was cool to see him here. His character has different changes throughout the course of the runtime, and it was interesting to see unfold, and I felt he handled this well. I thought the story of this movie had some interesting things going for it. The main crutch of this thing relied on Jonas's character looking for her husband, who we see being intercepted during the cold open of this thing. I enjoyed a lot of the first act as it has enough action scenes to keep you engaged for a majority of the runtime. Some of the dialogue I felt throughout was really poorly written though. Not to say they didn't pay attention to actual pirate phrases, but there's just some standard over-explaining, streaming dialogue, which is great for the people who will chuck this on the background when they're not doing anything. I feel like there was a bit of a slog during the second act of this movie. Nothing too interesting happens besides Jonas's character and her family going through the motions of making their way to the end of the movie, basically. The third act is essentially a really long action sequence, and it even gets a little Rambo-y at times, for better or worse. I'm about to show my miseducation here, as I will describe something that has really bothered me watching this. There's a quick shot in this action sequence where a scope POV is shown before shooting at someone. The scope itself literally looks like something that would come out of an early Call of Duty game. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I truly don't believe they had scopes that fucking existed back then. Besides this though, I did appreciate for being really violent. I feel like most pirate films, especially modern ones, should definitely lean into being R-rated, as you'll hear stories about these people, and most of the time they do sound pretty brutal. Next, I want to talk about the cinematography, which is done by Greg Baldy. Hey, like that one guy.
I am Baldy. Nice to meet you. Fuck me in the ass and call me Patricia.
The only other film he's done cinematography for is the movie Extraction 2, which is funny as that movie and the first Extraction, which I've both done reviews for on the channel, is basically famous for having really long take action sequences, which pretty early on in this movie is done in the first act. The one take is pretty good. The choreography of the action blends well with the different angles that had to be pulled off, as it made for an entertaining and engaging sequence. Another shot I particularly liked was this top-down view, which felt like a video game. However, my problem with the shot boils down to an editing choice that chooses to place a different shot over it before cutting back to it. I feel like a lot of modern films have a tendency to almost over-edit at times. Like, my god, just let the shots breathe, please. Apart from these outliers though, there isn't too much interesting stuff going on with cinematography. Some of the lighting is nice. There are a lot of warm tones, which sometimes are even achieved with candlelit rooms. But other than that, it looks like every other streaming movie with its flat lighting, but I appreciate at times some of the color grading was pretty saturated. However, I hate to be comparing. When you look at this movie and then you look at the looks, the style, the soul of Gore Verbinski's pirate franchise, it's almost night and day in terms of its lighting and color grading, especially alone. The only other point I want to mention in this movie is the music. The music was composed by Henry Jackson, who's done music for movies like Captain America Civil War and Kingsman: The Secret Service. I felt like a lot of the music in this movie was such a mixed bag here. There's a lot of high octane, adrenaline pumping type of music. Like, I understand this is an action movie, but I sort of didn't fit sometimes, especially with its inclusion of electric guitars. I'm gonna sound like such a glazer here, and it's not really fair to say, as the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise's music was mainly composed by Klaus Badelt, and since those movies had a much higher budget, they had more musicians to work with. But in comparison, the music in those movies are jaunty and irreverent in places. During dialogue scenes or comedic moments, the music itself feels like it's drunk. During the action scenes, they're exciting and thrilling through their orchestration, and most of all, they're memorable. If you asked most people on the street to name the song from the first time of them hearing it, they'd easily be able to identify it. While I had a few positives, this movie didn't really do much for me. It's unfair to compare it, but I don't feel like we'll ever get incredible pirate movies again. Hell, even after the 2000s, the Verbinski movies started to fall off. Probably because he didn't actually direct anything past the third movie. I'm definitely being biased and unfair, as this is a streaming movie, so there's obviously a lot less effort in this movie. Like I said, I can appreciate them taking this to an R-rated level. They do literally have a scene where someone gets killed with a cannonball, and while it's shown from far away, it's still a pretty creative kill. I think if we want a pirate film to fully work again, it needs to have a pretty big budget. Maybe rely more on practical effects too, and if CGI is put in use, a lot of care and dedication should be put into it rather than it just cutting corners. There were so many points in this, especially during the very end of the movie, where characters were just in front of a terrible green screen, where it never looked like they were really there, and it was just the most obvious green screen, probably the most obvious green screen that I've seen all year so far. I'm giving The Bluff 2.5 stars. The performances are okay, and I will admit there is a fair bit of creative things done with the cinematography, but it's brought down so much by pretty bad writing and drawn out sequences that almost take away from some of the more interesting aspects of the movie. The film isn't even all that long, but I still feel like the pacing falls a bit flat here. A lot of the visual effects get pretty distracting too, especially if they don't fully fit the settings that they're placed in. If you're new to the channel, I review a lot of streaming movies. I try to do it as much as I do with movies that are out in cinemas. I prefer the cinema experience, but whenever a new streaming movie comes out, I try to make an effort to review it, no matter what the quality is. So subscribe if you want to see that stuff more in the future. This is currently on Amazon Prime, but I don't think it's interesting enough for someone to waste their money on it. So if you don't feel like your money being taken, I would suggest to just act like the characters in this movie and pirate this one. Please laugh. Please